My name is Natalie Fan. I'm 34 living in San Jose, California. My parents were Vietnamese nail techs in Riverside, grinding 10 hours a day under fluorescent lights, breathing in acetone, and biting back curses with forced smiles. My mother once told me, "Don't live like me. Don't let anyone treat you like the spa owner who screamed at me in front of customers." I heard that enough times to know I had to carve out a life where no one could talk down to me again. I went to Stanford, worked 2 jobs while attending full-time. After graduation, I landed a position at Stratonix Data, a fast-growing analytics company in Silicon Valley. I had no connections, no head start, but I was good, really good. And I could handle pressure like nobody else. 6 years in, I'd risen to head of strategic planning, directly managing high-profile data contracts with our top investment partners. I used to believe that doing your job well was enough, that if you delivered, you'd be respected. But I forgot one thing: in any place where power flows through the hands of a man, fairness is optional. David Roy, the CEO, wasn't dumb. In fact, he was dangerously smart. He knew how to use people. But what he valued most wasn't results. It was obedience, loyalty. And if that loyalty came from someone beautiful, charming, and eager to praise him in meetings, even better. I wasn't that kind of employee. I was direct, efficient, and I didn't kiss ass. Then came Megan. She wasn't just a secretary. According to HR, she had been a legal assistant at a small firm in Oakland, a firm that folded after a messy 2-year lawsuit. A colleague once whispered that Megan had lived in her car for months after getting laid off. I felt bad for her at first until she started getting a little too close to David. She had access to my meeting calendar internal inbox and all my strategic folders granted by executive authorization. One afternoon, I stepped out of the conference room for a quick client call. I left a stack of sensitive analysis documents on the table. When I returned 5 minutes later, they were gone. I checked the system. Someone using Megan's IP had accessed my personal folder 12 minutes after I left, but I didn't have clearance to view detailed logs. I went to IT. They said there was nothing unusual. I escalated it to HR. Stephanie, the head of HR, was David's college friend. I knew that because I once saw an old camping photo of them on LinkedIn. I showed her the data, my suspicions, the access history. She gave me a practiced smile. Unless you have concrete evidence, I'd be careful making those kinds of accusations. A week later, Megan presented a strategy pitch almost identical to the file I'd lost in front of Japanese investors. David introduced her as one of our rising strategic stars. I sat in the audience, my stomach knotting, fists clenched beneath the table. But I said nothing. I knew if I lashed out without solid proof, it would blow up in my face. I needed to wait to catch them when they slipped. That night, I came home feeling like my chest was packed with wet cement. Ryan, my husband, noticed right away. He's a software engineer, very logical, not much of a talker. We met at Stanford, survivors of the same ramen-fueled hustle. He once told me how his ex cheated on him with a coworker and how it wrecked his ability to trust again. That night, he asked me, "You okay?" I said it's complicated, but I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't tell him about Megan or David. I figured I could handle it, but I underestimated them. 3 weeks later, Stratonix held its year-end party at the W Hotel in downtown San Jose. David and I were assigned to greet Korean partners beforehand. After the meeting, we stepped out into the lobby together. I noticed someone at a distance raise a phone and snap a photo. I didn't think much of it. 3 days later, an anonymous email circulated among the management team. The photo, me and David walking side by side, me smiling him, leaning in like he was whispering a secret. The angle was perfect for misunderstanding. HR called me in the next morning. Stephanie didn't ask questions. She just showed me the image and said flatly, "The board is concerned about your professionalism. You're being placed on leave pending investigation." I walked out of HR feeling like I'd just been shoved into traffic. That night, Ryan was already home. His phone was open, the photo front and center. He said, "Just tell me it's not true, and I'll believe you." I looked him straight in the eyes. It's not true. I was there for work. Someone's trying to destroy me. I tried to explain Meg and David everything, but Ryan shook his head slowly. I don't want to hear justifications. I'm not strong enough to believe when my heart's been broken before. That night he packed his things. At the door he paused. I need time. I don't know who to believe anymore. I stood in our living room frozen, watching the door close behind him. The light in the kitchen flickered, like even the house had started to come undone. I sat down on the floor. I didn't cry, I couldn't. I had lost everything: my job, my reputation, the man I loved. I laughed, not out loud, just a breathless twitch of the lips. If this was war, then I would fight. Not for justice. This time it was personal. It took me 2 weeks to stop jolting awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced I was still sitting across from HR with their stone faces and printed lies. I logged out of every company app, deleted internal group chats, but the anonymous messages kept slipping through. What did sleeping with the boss get you? Ambition, or your body? Megan earned it. You begged for it. No one looked up when I returned to clear out my desk. The silence was thicker than pity, it was condemnation. Only one person acknowledged me, Martha. She was an old-school IT staffer nearing retirement, always quiet, always watching. As I passed her cubicle, she slipped me a folded note. Just 3 words written in block caps: logs are saved. I didn't get it at first, but her eyes told me enough I wasn't entirely alone. 3 days later, I received an anonymous email, no subject line, no message. Just an attachment, an exported log from the internal access system. It showed Megan had accessed my private folders multiple times using a special admin override David himself had granted her. Not once, not twice, multiple times. I clenched the printout so hard my knuckles turned white. But I didn't act, not yet. Because just then another opportunity landed in my lap, one that would crack open the door to my revenge. It was a text from Emma. We'd met in our economics track at Stanford. Emma now worked as a partner at a small but fast-growing venture capital firm. Her message read, "Your name came up in some internal talks. What the hell's going on at Stratonics?" I hesitated, then replied, "Can you meet for coffee?" We met at a cafe in Palo Alto packed with startup kids, pitching to board investors over $8 cappuccinos. I told Emma everything: the sabotage, the photo, the smear campaign. She sipped her espresso with a kind of knowing calm. "We almost invested in Stratonics last year," she said. But something felt off. David Roy doesn't build businesses, he builds puppets. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Then I said I want to start something of my own. I don't just want to prove them wrong, I want to replace them. Emma leaned back and smiled. "If you're building a real-time behavioral data platform, I know 2 early-stage clients starving for that. I'll fund your MVP, but Natalie, no more playing nice. We founded Insight Nest within a week. I pulled my entire $38,000 savings from the bank. Emma wired in pre-seed capital. I brought on Luis, a brilliant but green developer I'd mentored years back. He became my CTO. We rented a tiny co-working office, just a corner desk, 2 laptops and a whiteboard with words like traction and kill Stratonics scribbled in red marker. I worked 16-hour days. Emma connected us to 2 fintech startups. We built the first working prototype in under 3 weeks. One late night, as I sat hunched over a screen full of code and graphs, I heard a knock on the glass door. It was Ryan. I didn't know how he got in. Maybe I forgot to lock up, but he stood there hesitant, holding something in his hand. A USB drive. He said, "I found this in one of your old phones. It's an audio file, a meeting recording, from the day they set you up." My chest tightened. He continued quietly. "I listened to it. I heard how David spoke to you, how they cornered you. I was wrong, Nat." I swallowed hard. I let fear cloud my trust. "You fought when I walked away," he said. "I want to help, if you'll let me." I stared at him, eyes burning. What can you even do? Ryan gave me a small, tired smile. Stratonix still runs on the same internal email system. Their infrastructure is sloppy. I can get you access logs, real data. We find the cracks and we rip them open. That night we stayed up until 4 a.m. Not making love, not crying, planning. Megan had now officially taken my title at Stratonix. She was on magazine covers in Forbes Women, giving interviews about breaking through glass ceilings. Her narrative was flawless, a resilient, sexy underdog. The media lapped it up. But behind the curtains, Ryan was hacking through firewalls, extracting internal comms. One email exchange popped up. Megan, we need to wipe any files Natalie touched, especially the July contract draft. Use admin override. David. On it, clean sweep, no paper trail. I printed it out and stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. Still, I didn't pull the trigger. I needed more. Martha agreed to meet me again. We sat in a greasy burger shack by Highway 101. She looked older than I remembered. Without a word, she slid a portable hard drive across the table. Full dump of internal emails from that month, she said. I kept it in case… Well, you know, I choked up. Why are you helping me? She looked me dead in the eyes. Because I've been where you are. I stayed silent. You didn't. Back at the office, Ryan helped me decrypt everything. We found evidence of fraud, embezzlement, sexual coercion, and a full breakdown of how HR was complicit. Still, it wouldn't mean anything unless I had something undeniable. That's when Ryan cracked the security footage. Using an old IP from Stratonix's network paired with credentials from a legacy login, he pulled down a 9-minute clip from the executive server backup. The day of my final meeting, David and Megan in his office thinking no one was watching, Megan leaning in, whispering, "As long as she's suspended, I'll handle the rest." David, hand casually resting on her thigh. "Good, just make it clean, nothing she can sue over." I stared at the screen. My stomach turned, my breath frozen. This wasn't office politics, this was a hit job. I had the logs, the footage, the emails, the motive. Now I just needed a stage. And that stage was coming sooner than they expected. That stage came dressed like irony. Insight Nest, my startup, had begun attracting attention after just 3 months. One of the firms sniffing around was Thorn Capital, a powerful VC that had, wait for it, just invested in Stratonix. They didn't recognize my name. They only saw our metrics, our product, our potential. Then I got the email. We'd like a representative from Insight Nest to present at our upcoming strategy summit, alongside portfolio companies including Stratonix. I stared at my coffee. My hand trembled. This wasn't just a chance. This was an invitation to walk right into the lion's den as an equal. Ryan didn't say much when I told him. He simply helped me polish the demo, debug our live dashboard, and pulled 2 all-nighters with me to get the numbers airtight. But while we perfected the product, I was preparing something else, a bomb. I reached out to Martha again. She agreed to meet after hours at a rundown burger joint near the highway. She came in wearing her old Stratonix windbreaker, her grey hair tied back. She didn't speak much, just handed me a hard drive. All the internal emails from the month you got axed, backed up before they purged the servers. I stared at it like it was gold. "Why now?" I asked. She shrugged. "Because they forgot I was watching." I turned it over to our attorney, a bulldog recommended by Emma. His team went to work. Within a week, we had everything David and Megan's email threads about neutralizing me, Stephanie, from HR, planning the PR cover story, fake expense reports, and multiple wire transfers with no supporting contracts. But we still needed one thing, something that would shut them up in real time. Ryan dove into the Stratonix security footage again, this time using credentials from an old backup server and a cloned IP from Martha's access logs. It took 3 sleepless nights, but he found it. A 9-minute video, timestamps, clear audio, executive office. David and Megan behind closed doors. She leans in. "Once she's suspended, I'll spin the rest." David nods, sipping whiskey from a company-branded tumbler. Make sure there's no legal leak. We bury her now, or she'll come back stronger. I watched that clip 4 times. My stomach twisted tighter each time. This wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated character assassination. They weren't scared I was incompetent, they were scared I was better. The day of the summit arrived. I wore a simple charcoal suit, tied my hair back in a low knot, and skipped makeup. I didn't need flash, I was bringing fire. At the conference, I walked into the grand ballroom heels, silent on carpet, and took my seat. Megan was already there, standing beside David, laughing too loud, wearing a white dress that screamed, "Power meets purity." When she saw me, her face twitched. She recovered quickly, sauntered over. "Natalie," she purred. "Didn't expect to see you here. I heard you were doing freelance." I smiled. "Insight Nest is doing great, but it's sweet you kept tabs." David walked up looking like someone had swallowed a lemon. "Didn't realize you were presenting," he said. "Neither did you," I answered. "But you should stick around. I've got something insightful." He didn't reply. Half an hour later, I walked on stage. The room was packed with investors, analysts, and a few familiar faces from Stratonix. I clicked the remote. The screen lit up. Insight Nest tracks real-time user behavior and visualizes data into immediate, actionable insights. For startups, this means faster pivots. For investors, it means transparency at scale. I demoed a live dashboard. The numbers were tight. The room was hooked. Then I said calmly, "And before I close, I want to share a real-world case study, one that highlights what happens when data governance and internal ethics fail." I clicked again. The 9-minute video began. David's voice echoed across the room. "We bury her now." Gasps. A few audible, "What the fuck's S?" Megan stood up, face pale. "Shut it down," she snapped. "This is illegal. I didn't move." The video played on. David reached for his glass of water, frozen in panic. Megan stormed toward the stage, but the event organizers blocked her. I turned to the crowd. "My name is Natalie Fan. I was head of strategy at Stratonix. What you've just seen is one of many pieces of evidence my legal team has gathered in an ongoing investigation." I paused. "And if this is how they treat one of their own, imagine how they treat your investments." The room was dead silent. Then, applause, not polite, not forced, the kind of applause that says, "We were waiting for someone to say this." David left without a word. Megan never made it back to her seat. That night, my inbox exploded. Clients, journalists, lawyers, whistleblowers from Stratonix. People who once ghosted me were now asking for meetings. The power had shifted, and this time it was in my hands. When the presentation ended, I walked out of that ballroom with a calm so sharp it felt like armor. Behind me, the buzz was instant. Investors whispering, analysts frantically typing, eyes darting like sharks, smelling blood. David caught up with me in the hallway, his face pale and jaw clenched. He held his leather folder like it was a shield. "What the hell do you think you just did?" he hissed. I turned to face him, voice steady. "I told the truth, and people listened. That terrifies you, doesn't it?" He opened his mouth to say something, but Megan beat him to it. Her heels clicked down the marble hall like gunshots. She stormed up, eyes blazing. "You violated privacy laws," she spat. "You filmed us without consent. You're finished." I laughed. "You might want to reread your HR handbook." That footage was from a company-owned camera in a company office accessed by a whistleblower, not me. "And by the way, my lawyer's on standby if you want to test that in court." Megan looked like she might lunge at me, but David stopped her. I saw it in his eyes. He was trying to calculate the damage, so I made it easy. "I'm not after your job," I said. "I'm after justice, and this is just the beginning." 2 days later, Stratonix announced that Megan was taking an indefinite leave for personal reasons. 1 week after that, I got a call from Thorn Capital. They wanted to invest in Insight Nest, and they wanted a full audit of Stratonix before they poured another dime into David's mess. Suddenly, doors that had been slammed shut opened with soft, apologetic creaks. Former Stratonix employees, people who'd stayed quiet for years, started reaching out. One woman from legal handed me falsified contract templates Megan used to redirect funds. A senior analyst told me about being pressured by David to flirt with potential clients to soften deals. When she refused, they reassigned her to a dead-end project. I handed all of it to my lawyer. He filed an official lawsuit in Santa Clara Superior Court on my behalf, with claims of defamation, fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. Ryan stood beside me the whole time, not always with words, he's still not a talker, but with quiet, unwavering presence. He cross-checked, financials, rewrote contracts, stayed up till 2 a.m., researching whistleblower protections. One night I asked him, "Why did you come back after everything?" He looked at me for a long time. "Because you kept fighting when I gave up, and I won't make that mistake again." I leaned into his shoulder and let myself breathe. 2 months passed. The media caught wind of the case. San Jose Business Watch ran a cover story, Stratonix CEO accused of internal sabotage, whistleblower steps forward. Megan was called in for questioning. She refused to talk, but then karma did its thing. A private voice recording leaked onto Twitter. Megan's voice crystal clear, bragging to a friend over drinks. "I didn't climb the ladder. I slept my way up it, and I'd do it again." Within 4 hours, the clip had over 300,000 views. Her social media accounts were bombarded. Her LinkedIn was shut down. Her PR firm dropped her. David, under pressure from investors and board members, was forced to resign. In his final board meeting, he didn't say a word. He just signed the release papers and walked out, his face a pale reflection of the predator he once was. Stratonix's stock plummeted 35% in 2 weeks. Major clients jumped ship. Thorn Capital made their move, offering a buyout at a reduced valuation, but with one condition: new leadership. Guess who they wanted? Me. They didn't hand it to me out of pity. They picked me because I had clients' momentum and, most of all, integrity. I took a night to think. Ryan didn't try to sway me. He just asked, "Do you want to build or do you want to burn?" The next morning, I accepted the role interim CEO during restructuring. My first day back at Stratonix, I walked into the building I once fled in shame. Now they held the doors open for me. No one dared whisper. I passed by familiar faces, most of them didn't meet my eyes. But that was okay. Respect is earned. Fear just walks in quietly. I stepped into the executive boardroom. On the table was a stack of applicant folders, resumes for advisory roles. The top one caught my eye: David Roy. 2 pages. Tidy, neutral tone, like he hadn't tried to ruin a woman's life months earlier. I stared at it for a moment, then picked up my pen. Under review notes, I wrote "declined. Integrity required." I closed the folder. I didn't smile, because this wasn't a victory lap. This was restoration. I was no longer someone's victim, no longer the underdog. No longer the woman crying on her kitchen floor. I was the one signing the decisions, and I signed with a steady hand. I sat in my new office high above San Jose, looking out over the city's sprawl and the distant line of soft grey mountains. The horizon was clear, the sky spotless, but inside something felt strangely hollow. I had everything I thought I wanted: a title, authority, a voice that couldn't be ignored. But power doesn't always come with peace. The silence in the halls was no longer cold, it was careful. People didn't talk behind my back anymore. They barely talked at all. They weren't sure if I was their leader or their reckoning. David never stepped foot in the building again. Word was he moved to some dusty town near Fresno, living off an old real estate deal he'd made years ago. Megan vanished. Someone on YouTube claimed to be her former roommate and said she'd joined a spiritual healing retreat in Sedona. I didn't care. They weren't dangerous anymore. But the past didn't leave quietly. One late night, I got home after a board meeting. Ryan was at the kitchen table reading the paper with a half-empty coffee mug in front of him. Without looking up, he asked, "You going to respond to MIT?" I stopped mid-step. I'd received an offer to teach a seminar at MIT, a guest lecture series on risk ethics and data integrity. It was prestigious, unexpected. I didn't know what to say. I'm afraid if I leave, the walls will fall again, I admitted. Ryan walked over and placed his hand lightly on my back, the same gesture he'd used since we were broke and 20, pulling each other through Stanford midterms and unpaid internships. You don't need to stand guard anymore, he said. You already won. Now you get to live. That night, I stared at the email, and I said yes. 6 months later, I officially stepped down as interim CEO of Stratonix. The board protested at first, but I already had my replacement lined up, Luis, the young coder I'd brought in to build Insight Nest from scratch. He'd grown into a quiet, capable leader, someone who valued people over politics. Insight Nest merged with a larger data healthcare platform shortly after. I kept equity, but handed off operations. Most of the money went into a foundation. I launched one that funded legal aid and mentorship for women of color in tech. One afternoon, I received a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a photo Megan makeup-free in a grey sweater standing in front of a whiteboard in what looked like a support group classroom. On the back, someone had scribbled, "She's trying to heal." Are you? I stared at the photo for a long time. I didn't feel anger or pity or satisfaction, just tired. I used to dream about seeing her ruined publicly, permanently, but when it finally happened, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like wasted energy, like I had outgrown the need for her to lose in order for me to win. I slipped the photo into an old notebook, tucked it between 2 yellowed pages, where I had taped a letter my mother once wrote me before college. In Vietnamese, she'd scrawled, "Don't let them bend your head down. But don't become evil to punish evil. The best revenge is living a life they could never imagine." I didn't pity Megan. I just didn't need to be her. A month later, Ryan and I left San Jose. We moved to Boston into a modest apartment near the Charles River. Each morning, I walked to MIT past brick buildings and ivy-covered columns. I taught mentored, graded papers, and for the first time in a long time, cooked dinner just because I wanted to. One afternoon after class, a student waited as the others left. She was young, shy, maybe 20. She asked quietly, "Professor Fan, have you ever been betrayed?" I smiled softly. "Yes," I said. And I learned that revenge doesn't always mean hurting someone back. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so successful they can't touch it or take credit for it. She nodded, eyes wide. I walked her to the door, then looked out at the quiet campus. I didn't need to burn anything down anymore. I didn't need a mic drop moment. I had my life, my name, my truth, and that was enough. One crisp autumn morning in Boston, I woke to sunlight bleeding through our window and the smell of fresh coffee wafting from the kitchen. Ryan sat reading the paper legs propped on a chair mug in hand, calm as ever. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. Some relationships don't need noise to feel full, not after what we've survived. I'd been teaching at MIT for nearly a year. What started as a guest series had turned into a full-time role. I now led a course called Ethics and Power in Corporate Cultures. My students were sharp, ambitious, eager to challenge systems. But I didn't just teach them theory, I gave them stories. Mine. Names withheld. Details blurred. But the truths were real. One day, a black student waited after class. Her voice was low, her hands trembling. "Professor Fan," she said. "I had a senior manager pressure me." I pushed back. "Now I'm being cut out of everything. What should I do?" I didn't give her a legal answer. I gave her the one that mattered. You start by believing yourself. Then you find someone who'll help you hold the line. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. That night I sat on the balcony of our apartment with Ryan, watching the river ripple in silver lines. Boston was colder than California, but it was the kind of cold that woke you up, not the kind that numbed you. My phone buzzed. It was Emma. Stanford's MBA program wants you to give the keynote at this year's graduation. They want someone who's been through fire. I exhaled slowly. I hadn't set foot on that campus since before everything unraveled. It felt like another life. Ryan looked up from his book. "You should go," he said. And so I did. Stanford was as beautiful as I remembered. Ivy vines crawling up brick-wide lawns, students buzzing with caffeine and ambition. I stood backstage in a tailored navy suit, holding a single folded paper, not a speech, but a letter. It was from my mother, written the day I left home for college in careful Vietnamese script. "Don't let them make you bow, but don't let revenge turn you cruel. The most beautiful vengeance is living the life they tried to steal from you." When it was my turn to speak, I stepped to the podium and read that quote aloud. I looked out over the sea of caps and gowns. I saw Emma in the front row beaming. I saw my mother older now, but proud. Beside her, Ryan's hand rested on hers. Afterward, a man approached me. I barely recognized him, James, a former junior analyst from Stratonics. He looked nervous. I wanted to say thank you," he said. "I didn't back you up back then. I was scared. But after you did what you did, I quit. Started my own analytics company. We just signed our first client." I shook his hand. "You don't owe me an apology. Just pay it forward." He nodded, eyes glassy. A week later, a package arrived on my desk at MIT. No note, just a framed newspaper clipping from San Jose Business Watch from the ground up. How Natalie Fan sparked a movement from the ashes of corporate corruption. At the bottom, someone had scribbled in pen, "We stayed quiet." You didn't. Thank you. I placed the frame in a wooden box. Inside were mementos, Megan's photo from the support group, Martha's note, a thumb drive with the original meeting audio, my mum's letter, no trophies, just truths, because revenge was never the point. Survival was, dignity was, legacy is. A former student once asked me, "What's the lesson behind everything you went through?" I told her this: don't just survive the fire, learn how to carry it. And I did.